the legal representatives from former SARS Commissioner Thabo Mdluli, accusing Public Enterprises Minister Gordhan of being evasive. However, Gordhan remained resolute that Moyane laid a criminal charge against him to advance state capture and with a personal agenda. The minister says he doesn't believe that Moyane was performing his duties at SARS as SARS Commissioner. Gordhan was being cross-examined today by Advocate Dalim Mpofu virtually, citing medical reasons for not appearing before the commission.
So, and also saying in laying the complaint again, we can take out the words against Mr. Gordhan, we say against X, Y, or Z. Mr. Moyane was motivated wholly or in part, or he sought to advance the objectives of state capture. You stand by that in laying the criminal complaint, he was motivated wholly or in part, or he sought to advance the objectives of state capture, correct?
It's correct in the context of all the other activities that he undertook, yes.
Yes, thank you. And then the third one is whether in laying the criminal complaint, again, we take out the words against Mr. Gordhan, against those other people. Mr. Moyane was abusing a legal process for his own personal goals that he had either nothing or little to do with a legitimate complaint relating to an alleged crime. You also stand by that?
Well, that's not my formulation. The concept of personal goals, Chairperson, how does one draw the line, which has mystified me, between what one does as a person when holding a particular official position or any position, and what one does by playing a role in that particular position. So I don't know what the word personal means in that context. Well, but if you say that he as a person did certain things, yes. But I don't know about what personal means.
No, but if you don't know what personal goals are, these are your words, Mr. Gordhan.
At the same time, Mpofu listed there was hostility between Moyane and Gordhan. The minister was accused of racism.
Mr. Moyane his version of where the hostility came from has got 5 elements. Firstly, he says it was caused by what one might call general arrogance towards him. And then he says, secondly, it was caused by what he terms petty jealousies about his role at SARS. And as I've said, those are issues I will touch on very briefly, but those are not the core issues. Then thirdly, he says it was also, it originated from your racism towards him specifically, and maybe towards African people in general. And then fourthly, he says it was motivated, and that is where we come closer to the meat. He says it was motivated by your desire to deflect from your own involvement in state capture and corruption. And then fifthly, he says it was because he blew the whistle on the mass trail of illegal activities and corrupt activities that you left behind at SARS, including the issue of the rogue unit and the alleged early retirement of Mr. Pillay.
Of course, looking at that fiery exchange today between Public Enterprises Minister Gordhan and former SARS boss Thabo Mdluli's legal team, with Gordhan being accused of racism, belittling and arrogance, researcher and political analyst Dale McKinley joins us now to examine today's proceedings, but also we've got Tumaole Mohlaoli live for us outside the commission today. It was, Tumaole, let me start with you, meant to sit for just 2 hours, but it ended up, of course, finishing off at 7:30 this evening with the possibility of continuing.
Yes, absolutely. Possibility of continuing at a date that's to be set between the Commission and, of course, Pravin Gordhan, as well as Tom Moyane's legal representatives. And, of course, the extension in terms of what was supposed to be essentially a brief cross-examination was due to the back and forth that ended up playing out between Advocate Dalim Mpofu, who is representing Tom Moyane, and of course Pravin Gordhan, Advocate Dalim Mpofu leading the evidence there, and he was making some very, very fiery and very hard-hitting allegations and accusations at some point against Pravin Gordhan, including accusations of racism. Accusations that in terms of his dealings with Mr. Moyane, he was accused of belittling Tom Moyane at some point in their exchanges over the period that was in question here before the Commission of Inquiry. And so this was the beginning of what was to be the day that was. And this was these exchanges going forth. You would have at some instances also Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo interjecting just to try and keep the peace and keep proceedings going. So certainly no love lost when you look at the posture that was adopted by Advocate Dalim Mpofu on behalf of his client, showing that this tense relationship that was playing out before as in a professional basis when Tom Moyane and Pravin Gordhan were interacting as the minister and of course with him in charge of SARS.
All right. Dale, let me bring you in here. Was there anything new revealed during this cross-examination except what Tumaole is telling us? And I suppose what we already know, that there was no love lost between the then Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan and the SARS Commissioner Tom Moyane. But key questions would have been, did any evidence emerge today of Mr. Moyane's contact with the Hawks and working with the Hawks to arrest Mr. Gordhan? Did we get any evidence of Mr. Moyane's hand in state capture as previously claimed by Minister Gordhan? And of course, the very important question of the rogue unit and the role that Mr. Gordhan played in the establishment of that.
Thanks, Thabo, and to the listeners and viewers. I don't think so. I don't really think my assessment of what we witnessed today was it made for good television. It made for quite good entertainment. But as a fact-finding process, it really didn't produce very much. I would call it more performative politics that we witnessed today. I think what we have heard over a period of almost 3 years now from the Zondo Commission is plenty of evidence to indicate, the facts behind what happened with the rogue report, the politics behind that, what happened in SARS. We don't need to rely whether it's Pravin Gordhan's personal reflections or how he feels about Tom Moyane or vice versa to come to those kinds of conclusions. So my worry here, and I think the concern, is that in the process of doing things like this, the Zondo Commission is getting caught in what I would call the weeds of the issue and the personalizations and these things. And in fact, where we start losing focus of what the real issues are here. There's no debate, I don't think, amongst any rational or person who's been paying attention of what happened to SARS and how it was run down. And the question is now, is there enough evidence that we have not seen, that we have not heard within the Zondo Commission to take action and to make those and hold those people responsible? Yeah. So the answer to your question is not really. I don't think we found out much new, although it was fairly entertaining to watch.
Tumaole, did the minister make any concessions today?
Certainly no real concessions, except for the tit for tat going back and forth, and him basically standing his ground and stating his view and his strongly held opinion that he is not a racist, as of course this was some of the allegations that were thrown and some of the accusations that were thrown at him by Advocate Mpofu there, saying that in his engagement with Mr. Moyane, he certainly suggested that there was an undertone of racism there in the way that he would address him as a grown man, using terms like he's calling him a boy, or not addressing addressing him respectfully. And he said that that speaks to a racist approach, and that Mr. Moyane was not happy about that, and that spoke to the breakdown in their relationship. But nothing really groundbreaking in that sense, except this playing out of the breakdown of relationship and how that was examined. So this is something that came out very strongly. And again, Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo having to interject at certain points to try and move the process forward as Advocate Dalim Mpofu and Pravin Gordhan went at it.
Right. Dale, I mean, a member of cabinet, I suppose one would expect they would want to go to the commission and really be of assistance to the commission. But, I mean, what we got from the minister are things like, well, in my own opinion, or it's a manner of speak, or things like it's based on what people have been saying and things like that. I mean, is it acceptable to get that kind of testimony coming from the minister? And was he, in your view, a difficult witness for this commission?
Well, I think, I mean, those of us who know Pravin personally or who have worked with him know he's a difficult person. I mean, let's be honest. He didn't get where he is by being a particularly, nice individual necessarily. That doesn't mean to say there's anything wrong with that. I think he's a very competent individual. But certainly, I think he was a bit evasive in the context, but it was a back and forth. I mean, it's not as though Tom Moyane himself and many of the others have been particularly forthcoming in regards to some of the questions that have been put for them as well. But I think in this case, it seems to me that Pravin Gordhan is a tired person in some ways. I think he's very tired of what has gone on. This has been probably, this has been going on for years and years. He was much more combative, I think much more effective early on in 2018 when he gave his testimony. And there were a lot of other aspects, not necessarily coming from him, that were there to back up some of the accusations that he made. As he said, one can connect the dots. He doesn't have to necessarily say so himself. But I think what we've seen here is we're seeing that factional politics and the ANC play itself out. And my sense is that Pravin Gordhan has been somewhat sidelined in that battle. And he is a figure that is sort of feeling as though I think he no longer has the kind of power that he did when he was minister previously. And I think that's reflected in the way, in the tone, and the nature of his testimony to say, look, you've got all the facts, go do what you want to do. I've said what I want to say. And in some ways, that's a fairly predictable outcome, I think, after all of this time.
Researcher Dale McKinley, I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming through tonight. And of course, Newzroom Afrika's Tumaole Mohlaoli, they're out for us there at the commission.